to the Crime Chat. I am your forensic femme fatale. Natalie is your true crime addict connoisseur.
We're just two normal girls who obsess about dark crimes, evil minds, and occasionally the unknown. And, well, we also obsess about John Douglas. Our list is growing. John, call us, please. Our espionage code name is Meow Mix. Or should I say, John, try to catch us, baby.
Catch us if you can. Oh my gosh. Here's your disclaimer, chatters. The following crime chat contains adult content and descriptions of very strange scenarios today. Not necessarily too violent, but a little creepy at the same time. So your listener discretion is advised.
Okay, so you've been warned. And before we get into today's crime chat, Kat, what have you done?
Well, I binge watched My Lover, My Killer. Have you seen that?
I have not, no.
But have you seen it advertised on Netflix?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So the whole series takes place in the UK, and it's like from various cities. A lot of them are in London, but it made me miss living there so much.
Aww.
I loved living in England. I was stationed out there for 3 years. My younger son was actually born out there.
What was your favorite part about England?
The countryside and just like I don't know, I just really like the atmosphere, and I think it's just something, it's a modernized old-timey feel, if that makes any sense.
So what do you prefer in England that we just don't get right?
Ooh.
Yeah. Could be a bunch of things. I mean, it could be fish and chips.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, and a lot of people are like, ooh, they drink warm beer. That's not really that big a deal, and you can ask for cold beer. But, like, I mean, I think the atmosphere, just kind of, like, in general, I absolutely adored London. I love the city, but there's so much thick history that's there, too. And where I was at, they were just so pro-American. And when you get out of that kind of, like, American-based location, like, we traveled a lot to the countryside. People are so nice. They're like, oh, you're American. You know, where are you from?
Florida. Get the fuck out.
They usually say Texas or New York.
Oh, really? Well, I'm thinking, like, that is not a cheap trip to take if you're going to vacation in London. That is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, in the 3 years that I was there, especially having a toddler and then having a newborn, there wasn't a whole lot of time to do, like, non-kid friendly things. So when we go back, like, I would love to do, like, the Jack the Ripper tour and do things like that. I did spend a lot of time in London, just, like, in general, but I just can't wait to go back. I don't know. I just love it there. I love it there. And the series, so just watching a lot of, like, the house that we lived in, it was smaller, but it was quaint, you know, and it just reminded me a lot of that. But so all of the series or episodes that's in this, like, series, basically, if you just by the title, My Lover, My Killer, but a lot of it also just reminded me of all the red flags that you don't always see.
Yeah.
That hindsight is like, yeah, that was a red flag, that was a red flag, you know, and it's not just the men killing the women.
Oh, no.
It's also,
Women have,
both
it's
ways.
harder to catch a woman.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah.
We went to, so this weekend I went to a restaurant called Capone's. I took pictures. I'll post it on the page. But it was, you know, it was all it's all like that touristy trap type of place. Like you walk in. Yeah. You probably have been there. It's in Fort Myers. It's like when you walk in, the doors have like these Tommy guns for handles.
Yeah.
And you walk in and like the Capone vault is like below your feet, like in glass enclosure. But when I went to the bathroom, the funny part is I'm walking down the hallway and I have a picture where the men's bathroom looks like a jail cell, but not the women's bathroom. And while I was walking in, one of the people were like, why is like, and while I was walking in the back, because women don't get caught. That's why.
Oh, that's great. No, that's perfect. Yeah. But that's pretty much all I've been doing. And then I got caught up on Mayfair Witches. I talked about that one before.
And you said that was good.
Yeah. Okay. And the next one that I'm going to start based on Paul's recommendation, because he said he was watching The Last of Us.
Yeah.
There's quite a few episodes out now that it's acceptable for me to binge.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
And I approve.
That's HBO. Okay.
And then there was another one on AMC Plus that has really got me interested. I haven't seen it yet. So chatters, let us know if you've seen it. It's called The Dirty Black Bag.
Oh, okay. Well,
and it's a Western type of genre kind of thing. And assumingly, just based on the teaser, in the black bag are heads of like bounties.
Right. Yeah.
But there's like not like the character that carries the bag around. I don't know his name, but the sheriff in town is played by Dominic Cooper, and he is one of my favorites. Do you know who that is?
I don't know who that is.
He was.
But I like his name.
Yeah, he was the lead character in Preacher.
I never saw that.
Oh god, that was good too. He was in the first time I saw him. He was in a movie called The Devil's Double that he played both Uday and Qusay Hussein, and the movie was based on Saddam Hussein's son at the invasion into Iraq. It's a very good movie. It's a very good movie.
You're the only person I speak to because I know I watch a lot of movies and films and TV shows, and the only time I feel like I'm being schooled is when I speak to Kat, where I'm like, I didn't hear about that. What?
Well, this one, it's an older movie. And I just because of, my professional experience, I should say. So that movie always had caught my interest. And I was like, oh, I really like this actor. And then I started seeing him in things. So I started seeing him in Preacher. And then he was also in Abraham Lincoln, the Vampire Hunter.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah.
Who was he?
He was, I can't think of his character name. But he was
a good guy?
Yes. He was the vampire. Exactly. He was the good vampire.
I know exactly who you're talking about. Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. Yes, I love him.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's great.
Right.
He's great. So that's on so one of those, I'm going to do The Last of Us, and the one that he's in, The Dirty Black Bag, I think is what it's called. It's on AMC Plus.
Okay, I gotta check that out. I gotta check that out. And I don't know if you have been watching the was it McDermott? Am I saying his name right? How do you say his name?
Murdaugh?
Oh, what am I saying McDermott for?
Oh my gosh!
Have you been watching that?
So I did. So I went to. It's funny because being so close, I go to the gym, and while his trial was going on, it was being live streamed. And it was it was on all the channels in the gym. So watching it there, HBO has a special on the Murdaugh murders, and Netflix has a special on it. So I watched both of those, and then of course he was found guilty. And so you want to hear my theory? I think he and Buster killed both Paul and Maggie.
Okay, so all right. So I think there's something shifty going on here, and we have a chatter that actually, because I posted about it when it happened, and we had a chatter come in with her theory, and it was, I didn't even think of it that way, and I'm like, holy crap, you're right, because she said the brother helped clean the crime scene.
He did.
So yeah, this was a family.
It was a family affair.
It was a family affair.
Yeah.
But why would the mother be killed? Is it because she was coming out to save her kid? Is it? Why?
I think just because she was a witness to it. Yes. I don't think she was necessarily the intended target. I think with Paul getting ready with everything that was happening there.
Right.
And then I don't know that Maggie necessarily. Well, and plus that was coming back up too, right? So the boat incident with Paul, he was getting ready to be. He was already indicted, so they were getting ready for trial for that.
Right.
Then the Gloria Satterfield. I think the mom did that. It was either the mom or Paul that were probably involved with pushing her down the stairs where she hit her head.
But they always said Paul loved her so much, and that.
Yeah, but
by the way,
the funny thing
that just to interrupt, but that chatter that had this theory is Gia Webster.
It's my aunt.
Oh my God, I love Gia. That was a great theory. Okay.
Hi, Gia. Yes. So we actually were chatting back and forth a little bit a few days ago when the verdict came out. Wow. Yeah, she's great. So I think just with all of this coming out, his motive is understandable for killing Paul. Paul probably was causing a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
He was going to bring the Murdaugh family down. Buster's the favored child, right? And then I think Maggie was probably just collateral damage in it all. And with all that happening, I think it could have because they were also on the outs, supposedly. She was living down in Edisto, and he was at the farm.
Right.
And so, not that part of the reason she supposedly was living down at the other house, like the beach house in Edisto, is because of all of the pressure and like everybody looking at the family. She just was like, I kind of want to get out. So there's a lot of theories and stuff about why they were living separately, but he asked her to come and have dinner that night. Stomach contents in the autopsy of both Paul and Maggie were very similar, so she probably did eat dinner there.
Right.
And then, I don't know, just the way he was lying about how he said he went to his parents that night, and then, but he was also caught on video. He wasn't seen on the video, but his voice was heard on the video that he was not where he said that he was, so he got caught kind of in that. I think Buster was part of it too, and I say that only because Buster was the favored child, and then there was 2 different weapons that were used.
Right.
A shotgun and a rifle.
But Buster's life is done. It's not like he has any connections with the law firm anymore. He can't. His family's law firm. Who would hire him?
Well, right. No, absolutely. And that's why I think the suicide attempt happened, was because we may be down, but Buster, here's some money. Go.
Right.
Because he didn't know if there was going to be a suicide clause. You know, in some life insurance policies, there's a suicide clause. But like if somebody else were to kill him, then, you know, Buster would be able to get the money and just basically have a fresh start. So that's Kat's theory.
They put my family drama to like shame.
Right?
My Lord. You know, and I think, well, they had a wrongful death case against Paul for like $10 million. The one that Mallory Beach.
Yeah, the Beach family. Yeah.
Oh,
it's just, and it was horrible. And then the whole Stephen Smith murder.
Oh my God, that breaks my heart. Did you see pictures
of him? He's adorable.
Oh my God, he's beautiful. Yeah. And I'm like, how did he get tied into all this? And then they were saying like, Buster possibly had some type of relationship with him.
And I could see that too, because that wouldn't have been acceptable here. It would absolutely not have been acceptable.
Oh my God.
If he was to have some sort of relationship, especially with not only a homosexual relationship or homosexual attraction, but a different class status as well.
Yeah.
Like,
that is a shame. That just breaks my heart when I saw the picture of Stephen Smith.
Yes.
I'm like, just more collateral damage that this family, the wake of this family is just.
Yep. And the fact
crazy.
that I love the fact that they reopened that case, and I don't know now with everything, you know, kind of if they, during the search after Paul and Maggie were murdered, if they found stuff to reopen the investigation into Stephen Smith, but
I hope so.
there's so many, like, it's an infectious family, but
whatever they touch, they destroy.
The disease kind of infection,
You want to know something? This is how I knew the prosecutors were going to win. All right, this is just a Natalie thing.
Okay.
It's a gut Natalie thing. So, like, I've done a lot of work in at the courthouses in Manhattan, because at one point I was becoming a lawyer and I was training to get my LSAT. I was interning, and I remember I would intern we had a couple of attorneys, the partners dealt with like medical malpractice and defense and all this stuff. One of the attorneys said, whatever you see, when you see like the desk or underneath the desk, the attorney that's working on their case, you could tell right away if that person is zoned in or not. And like I looked during the trial, if you looked behind like the camera and you saw the prosecution's table, that sucker was a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, that man did not care what it looked like. He had boxes underneath. He had like cases of water. He didn't care. Yeah. He zeroed in on what he had to do.
Right.
It wasn't about playing to the camera. And I'm like, see, like some good prosecuting work happening right now. Oh, Kat. So before we get into your story, by the way, all right. So I know you said that your 2 things. 1, it was a familiar name, and 2, that it was about a spy.
Yes.
And I don't know much about spies. Okay, I only know what the government has told us about spies. I don't know.
Which you can't always trust.
Hollywood, which you can't always trust, even Hollywood.
Right.
All right, so my definition of a spy is James Bond.
Sure.
Sexy, okay. But according to the Webster Dictionary, a spy is one who keeps a secret watch on a person or a thing to obtain information. A person employed by one nation to secretly convey classified information of strategic importance to another nation. Also, a person who conveys the trade secrets of one company to another. So it doesn't have to be government. It could be personal, or it could be corporate.
Yeah,
whatever.
Corporate spying, corporate espionage is also very, very huge.
Yeah, and we spoke about that during the McAfee. Right?
Yep.
So in the United States, the spy definition for our government is one person who penetrates secretly or in disguise or falsely or by false pretenses within the military lines for the purpose of obtaining information to be used to the disadvantage of the forces who they are spying on. So I'm sure you have some experience with this. Right? Just so you know.
If I tell you, I'd have to kill you.
Listen, okay? Just so you know, so the person that I spent the weekend with was also military, and I asked him, I said, are there stories you can't tell me? And he said, he goes, our government's smarter than that. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, he goes, every time I was sent to a job, and he did deep sea diving, you know, and stuff like that. And he's like, every time I was sent to a job, I knew two things: where I had to be and what I had to do. Other than that, they don't indulge too much information. Like they separate. They know how to. They got boundaries. They got their boundaries built.
There's also a difference between tactical level and strategic level.
Yes.
So he sounds like more of the tactical level,
right?
Where you get in the strategic level, that's where all the long-term chess game comes in.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
But you can't do that without that tactical information.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
so it does all play into one another.
But it's unique how there's so many people that go into the military, thousands and thousands and thousands, and yet their knowledge is particularly limited on what they did. It's not like they can't be trading secrets. Yeah. You know, because the government is smarter than them in a way, and it's like, all right, I don't know.
But there's somebody, and we'll get into his story today, who oversees who knows what and is on top of knowing everything's going on.
Oh my God.
Somebody has to know everything.
We know everything. Okay, so we're going to play a game, Kat. So, chatters.
Secret game.
Can Kat be a spy? Her code name? Meow.
Meow.
You ready? Now, this is a real active live test that I'm going to give you, and you can't see it.
I can't. Guys, I cannot see it. I have no idea. I'm literally sweating right now.
No, you're going to be great because a lot of it is historical stuff, too. Like, you know, things that have happened already.
It doesn't mean I'm going to remember it. I might have heard it before.
I have a feeling that you're going to get a couple of these doozies. Okay, so number one.
Wait, before you start, don't judge me. No white wigs here, okay? Here we go. Go ahead.
Okay, number one. What did British intelligence agents discover was the most effective method to turn captured German spies into double agents? Was it sleep deprivation, threatening to kill them, long imprisonment, or convincing arguments?
I'm going to go with sleep deprivation.
Okay. What was the primary mission of Ultra during World War II? Was it 1. Counterintelligence, 2. Code breaking, 3. Surveillance, 4. Espionage.
Code breaking.
3. Richard Sorgi was the Soviet Union's most successful spy. What vital information did he have that Stalin ignored before the hostilities with Germany? Was it 1. The date of Operation Barbarossa, 2. The purpose of Operation Z, 3. The target of Operation Zitadel, and 4. The meaning of Operation Sea Lion?
Sea Lion.
Oh, you were confident there.
I feel confident in that one, but I don't know.
All right, number 4. During World War II, what was the Soviet spy ring in Switzerland known as? 1. The Swiss Orchestra. 2. Rado's Reds. 3. The Dora Group. 4. The Red Orchestra.
I'll go with the Red Orchestra. I don't think it would be Swiss. That would be giving it away. Red's very Soviet.
Okay, you're doing good. I mean, then again, I don't know. I don't know the answer either. So
okay, you won't know until the end. Yeah?
I won't know until the end either.
Oh,
okay,
shit.
Number 5. During World War II,
are these all like World War II ones?
Yeah, I went to things that have happened. I didn't want to be like, what is a spy? You know what? I do have a follow-up question, a personal question. Spy related, but I'll ask it at the end. Okay. And that's gonna be the cherry on top.
I mean, World War II is like the ultimate spy game, so it makes sense that these questions are centric around it.
Okay, so number 5. During World War II, what was the code name of the Soviet spy Rudolph Rosler?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Louisa, Linda, Lucy, Louise. I've never heard of this guy before, so I don't know.
I'll say Louisa.
Okay.
I have
there
no
a reason
idea.
why Louisa?
No.
Okay. Number 6. The operation The Man Who Never was used to fool the Germans prior to the invasion of Sicily. What type of covert action was used? Was it 1. Disinformation, 2. Sabotage, 3. Espionage, 4. Assassination.
Disinformation.
7. During World War II, what was the German counterintelligence agency known as? 1. The OKW, 2. The Gestapo, the Gestapo? Gestapo? Okay. 3. I'm not even pronounce this word. It's ABWEHR.
Abwehr?
Abwehr. Or 4. The SS.
Ooh, it's either Gestapo or SS. Because they both sound familiar. I was pretty confident with Gestapo, but then you said SS. It was the Soviet spies? Or German?
German.
Let's go with Gestapo. Go with my first instinct.
Okay. What did the Office of Strategic Service become after World War II? Was it 1. NAS, 2. FBI, 3. CIA, 4. ONI?
And SIS was Strategic Intelligence. What was this? What was
it's the Office of Strategic Service. What
Office
did they become?
The OSS. Yeah. I think Office of National Intelligence. ONI.
ONI?
I think.
All right, we're almost.
It was either that or CIA. Change it. It's CIA.
Change it. Okay.
Can you go back?
Yes.
Change it to CIA.
All right.
Listen, my friends, don't kill me. They're probably going, no!
They're probably saying, how did Natalie get that word wrong? Because it's a Nat-ism, okay? All right, so number 9. During World War II, which U.S. law enforcement agency was responsible for apprehending spies? Was it 1. The police, 2. The FBI, 3. The United States Army Intelligence, or 4. The OSS?
Oh, the OSS.
OSS.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last one.
It was either that or military intelligence, but I don't know.
It says U.S. Army Intelligence.
Yeah.
Do you want to stick with your final?
Well, I mean,
answer?
yeah, stick with OS. That was responsible for capturing or catching.
Which U.S. law enforcement agency was responsible for apprehending spies? Yeah, catching.
Military. Go do the Army one.
The Army one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and the last question. Well, then I have another question after this. Okay. What did Japanese undercover agents discover while spying in Hawaii prior to World War II? Was it 1. Most Japanese Americans were loyal U.S. citizens. 2. Most Japanese Americans were loyal to Japan. 3. Most Japanese Americans were neutral. Or 4. Most Japanese Americans disliked only China.
I'll go with the first one. The Americans, loyal to Americans. I know Americans hated Japanese afterwards. I did horrible, didn't I?
No. Okay, so the first question, which is what did the British intelligence discover the most effective method to torture German spies? You said sleep deprivation. The correct answer was threatening to kill them.
That doesn't work.
So 1, you didn't get right. 2, you got right. 3, this was the Richard Sorge, the Soviets' most successful spy. What did Stalin ignore before the hostilities with Germany? You said this was Sea Lion, and it was actually the date with Operation Barbarossa.
It was the actual date? Okay.
So there's it's a long reason for this, but I'm not going to get into it because I want to get into your story. You got number 4 right. 5, code name.
That was the Louisa?
Yeah, it's Lucy.
Oh, it was Lucy. Okay.
Fucking difference. All right.
Lucy, Louise.
6 you got right. 7, no. What was the German counterintelligence agency known as? You said the Gestapo.
It was OS.
And it was that weird name. It was that ABWEHR.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
ABWHER. Abwehr? Oh. See, and I don't like. I mean. I find this era fascinating when it comes to the spy game because it was literally the epic for spying. Like, it was like, it paved the way for the future kind of thing. There was so many originating ideas and thoughts and stuff that came out from the World War II time frame, but there's so much of it.
Yeah.
I can't retain it all.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. So the last one that you got wrong was which law enforcement agency was responsible for apprehending spies. It was the FBI, baby.
It was the FBI?
Yeah,
really, was
the
it?
FBI.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Ah, shit.
So you got 5 out of 10.
Which is, so that's...
Which is excellent.
Well, no, it is. And the FBI is responsible for catching spies within the United States.
Right.
So it depends. I was thinking more so World War II overseas catching spies.
Okay.
So within the continental United States, that's where their jurisdiction is. And the difference between that and then CIA usually covers for overseas and espionage type of operations.
With that said, I'm going to read you how they come up with FBI. It says, during World War II, the FBI was responsible for investigating and apprehending foreign intelligence agents operating on U.S. soil.
Okay, so I would have been right. Yeah.
You would have been right. She's right. Right. You're right. All right. So my follow-up question and the last question for the day is, Kat, you're in Cambodia.
Oh.
You're about to play Russian roulette. Okay. Mm-hmm. You got $60 million to play with. What drink do you order at the bar?
Shirley Temple.
You gotta stay focused.
Make it think that you're drinking, but you ain't drinking.
Is it shaken or stirred?
Oh, shake it.
Oh, okay. Good. All right, you pass.
Always.
You pass.
Always.
So good job.
Not really. I did shitty.
I think that you would make a very good spy. You would look good at it.
I mean the code names, I think those were a little tricky. Okay.
Yeah.
Like but obviously I can't really talk a whole lot about some of the things that I've done or have been a part of. But what we are going to talk about today was described by the U.S. Department of Justice as possibly, quote, the worst intelligence disaster in U.S. history, end quote. And I've seen some botched operations, but for 25 years in the FBI, former Special Agent Robert Hanssen was arrested and charged with 13 counts of espionage, 1 count of attempted espionage, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit espionage.
Oh, boy.
So how is it possible that, 1, this counterintelligence officer turned spy would turn his back on his country, 2, would be in charge of the investigation into a mole into the FBI in which that was him? He was in charge of investigating himself. And then 3, what's money got to do with it? All right, let's find out, y'all. Born in Chicago, Illinois on April 18, 1944, Robert Philip Hanssen was allegedly abused by his father, Howard, a Chicago police officer, in his early childhood. He graduated high school in 1962 and then earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1966. Originally seeking a job with the National Security Agency, the NSA, Hanssen was turned down due to budget cuts, which, of course, we all know that, I know somebody who's a U.S. Marshal now who is waiting to get into the Marshals for 4 years.
Oh, my God.
Hanssen then attended dental school, but switched to business after 3 years of graduate school. So, he was, 3/4 of the way there, and he's like, I'm going to switch. But while he was still at dental school, he met and then married his wife, Bonnie Wauk. What?
You're asking me? Okay.
In 1968. Hanssen finished graduate school and earned an MBA in accounting and information systems in 1971. After only working a year at an accounting firm, he quit, joined the Chicago Police Department as an internal affairs investigator. I always thought it'd be super interesting to work internal affairs.
Yeah, but everybody hates you.
Everybody hates me anyway. I don't care.
Get in line. This dude sounds really smart.
He is.
Super smart. Okay.
But he also kind of lets it get to his head because he thinks he's smarter than everybody. In January 1976, Hanssen applied for and was accepted into the FBI. So his first assignment was in Gary, Indiana. He just did regular field work, which this FBI is kind of aligned where they do criminal investigations and counterintelligence investigations at the federal level. So there's a lot of federal statutes that fit their focus in under the United States Code, just various different levels and stuff of what they'd be able to investigate. So he did that for a few years, and then in 1978 he was transferred to a field office in New York City. New York. At this point, the Hanssens had 3 of 6 children. They would end up having 6 kids total. By 1980, Hanssen was assigned as a counterintelligence agent and detailed with compiling a database of intelligence on the Soviet Union. This is where Hanssen sought out the Soviet intelligence director, then called the GRU. He sought out Soviet intelligence and offered his services.
Oh.
This is like early in his career. He was only a special agent for a few years. While not indicating he had any political or ideological motivations for doing so, he later told the FBI after his arrest that his motivations were simply financial, to get money. I did it for the money, money, money. So there's a couple different espionage cycles that he was involved in. During the first espionage cycle, it went from 1976, which would have been the beginning of joining, to 1981. Hanssen provided sensitive and classified information to the Soviets, to include details of FBI's bugging activities and lists of suspected Soviet intelligence agents within the United States.
Oh my God.
So he had access as a counterintelligence agent to a list of suspected spies. So these are the people that we suspect are spying against us, trying to get our secrets. So these are the people that we're going to target. So he gave that list of who the U.S. is looking into to the Soviets.
Oh my Lord.
His most notable leak of betrayal was that of Dmitry Polyakov, a Soviet CIA informant who was passing information, basically spying for the U.S., passing Soviet intelligence to CIA agents. And this guy, Polyakov, also was kind of making his way in the Soviet army. He ended up being a Soviet army general. So as he's like making his rank, he's providing sensitive Soviet information to the CIA.
Oh my God. That's scary shit.
And for whatever reason, the Soviets actually knew that Polyakov was a spy, and they never took any action against him at this point. I personally would have thought they would have executed him, like, right away, like, immediately. But at the same time, sometimes it's a cat and mouse game. You have to wait and see what happens.
It's a meow mix.
It's a meow mix. It's like go wait and see. So sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So the more you know, the more you're prepared to make your next step. It's a very slow, strategic, intentional thing.
Right. And maybe the Soviets wanted to see if we knew, and if he went missing by us.
Yes.
Maybe they wanted to see,
I know that you know.
Right.
Yeah, right. Like, I know that you know that you know that I know, but I'm not going to tell you I know because you know that I know that I know that you know.
Right. And while he's alive, you don't think I know, but I know.
Yes.
Oh, my Lord.
You're getting it. You're getting it. So it could have tipped the hands to the CIA if they would have executed or done anything to Polyakov. It wasn't until CIA spy Aldrich Ames. Does that name sound familiar?
It does.
Okay.
How?
We'll talk about him for a second. He provided the same name of Dmitry Polyakov to the Soviets in 1986. So while Robert Hanssen is giving the Soviets, hey, your General Polyakov is a spy and is giving information, CIA employee Aldrich Ames was giving the Soviets the same thing. He was also committing espionage.
Wow. Holy shit. Can't trust anybody.
Oh, exactly. In 1986, Aldrich Ames gave this information. Polyakov eventually was arrested and executed in 1988.
By who? By them?
By the Soviets.
Okay.
So they did catch him and executed him eventually, but not at the time when Robert Hanssen gave him the information, which would have been early 80s. Okay, so if you don't know who Aldrich Ames is, he was a CIA agent who was convicted of espionage in 1994. Perhaps a future crime chat in the making. We may have to, if this episode goes over well, chatters, let us know if you like this kind of stuff. We'll get into, give us a chatter request. We'll knock out Aldrich Ames as well. Ames was originally thought to have been the only person from the U.S. government side to provide the Soviets with information on General Polyakov. And it wasn't revealed that Hanssen also fed this information until after Hanssen was arrested in 2001. So originally, this was only pointed to Aldrich Ames.
That's a long fucking time to be in the dark.
Yeah. Well, Hanssen eventually said, I also provided that information after his arrest. Hanssen, he's in New York City, right? So after the New York City field office assignment, he was then assigned to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. in 1981. His new position gave him access to various information, to include FBI wiretapping, electronic surveillance operations, which he was in charge of. During this time, he also became known as an expert in computers with the FBI, because remember, he got a degree in information systems. Right. And this was the early 80s when computers were up and coming.
Did we really not
the next
know?
Big thing.
We didn't know? Oh my God.
Well... After 3 years, Hanssen was transferred to the FBI's Soviet Analytical Unit because of his experience before, because he was already a counterintelligence agent. So he was responsible for then studying, identifying, and capturing Soviet spies and intelligence operatives within the United States.
Okay.
If you think of this time frame also, it was the Cold War. The Soviets were the biggest foreign threats against the United States. And while he was at the Soviet Analytical Unit, Hanssen was also responsible for evaluating Soviet agents who volunteered to give intelligence to the United States to determine basically, like, are you authentically volunteering to give us this information, or are you a double agent?
Right.
So a double agent essentially is when, let's say, I'm a Soviet and I come to you and I say, I want to give you information. But I'm being controlled by the Soviet government and authorized to give you certain information. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm feeding you information that the Soviet government is telling me to give you, and then turning around and getting information from you, and feeding that back to the Soviets. So that's a double agent.
Right, and we do that every day.
I can't say we do.
Well, I think we do that every day at work. Every day.
It's all backstabbing is all it is.
Yeah, but it's like
backstabbing.
It's a controlled way of feeding information and getting information.
It is. No, absolutely it is. But this is where you also, it's a gentleman's game, if you will, for the terminology, where it's a gentleman's game.
Us bitches are better. Especially at this.
We'll call it a bitch slap.
A bitch slap.
But, so, during this time frame, obviously, it was heavy for Soviet spying. In 1985, Hanssen was transferred from D.C. back to the New York City field office, where he continued to work against the Soviets as a counterintelligence agent. This is where Hanssen's second round of espionage would take place. So he had a little bit of a break when he was at FBI headquarters from 81 to 85. Okay. Now picking up from 1985 to 1991, that's kind of like his second round of espionage. So Hanssen sent an anonymous letter on October 1st, 1985 to the Soviet KGB asking for $100,000 in exchange for his services, meaning I'll give you sensitive information, I'll give you classified information, but you need to pay me for it. That $100,000 is actually worth about $250,000 today. In the letter, he was like, I can provide you my services. Here's a little taste of what I can do. So he gave them 3 names of 3 other KGB agents, Boris Yeltsin, Valery Marennikov, and Sergei Moritin, basically saying these 3 KGB agents are giving information to the U.S.
Oh.
So he was ratting them out.
Oh, boy.
And although Hanssen was unaware of this, Aldrich Ames also had exposed the same 3 agents to the Soviets.
So in a way, the Soviets were like, all right, he's telling the truth.
It's like from their side, it's validated information.
Right.
Or it's corroborated, right?
Wow.
Most of the time, the Soviets who were providing information to the U.S., essentially providing Soviet secrets, they were located in the United States. So have you ever seen the TV show The Americans?
Yes, I was just going to say that to you.
Yes.
It sounds familiar, and it sounds like that show.
And that show is actually very closely related to a good picture of how things operated in the 80s in the United States, how the Soviet spies were able to just embed themselves into society. It's such a perfect picturesque look into how things actually were. And this is, it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
So when Boris Yeltsin, he was one of the 3 names that was listed on that letter, returned to Moscow in 1982, he was subjected to intensive Soviet interrogation and investigation by the KGB not because his name was in the letter, but because he lost a hidden camera at the San Francisco Soviet consulate. So a consulate is basically a satellite location from an embassy. So we've got embassies are the big buildings, and then there's consulates like in different areas. So like most of the other countries' embassies are in Washington, D.C., right?
Right.
So they could have like satellite stations in different states. For this instance, Russia or Soviet Union at this time, had a consulate, which is like a satellite office from the embassy in San Francisco, in California.
Okay.
So Boris Yeltsin actually was not arrested until he was exposed by both Hanssen and Aldrich Ames for spying. So he was in trouble already for this like missing this hidden camera that he left somewhere.
That poor guy.
And then they're like, oh, by the way, we also know you're spying to the United States. And then the other two people, Valery Marinov and Sergei Moritin, were recalled back to Moscow. So they were operating in the United States at this time as Soviet agents under the cusp of diplomatic personnel.
Immunity or like some type of...
Sometimes immunity just means they can't be charged within the United States, but like in a way. So they were in some sort of diplomatic role working at the embassy, but really they were spies.
Right. But the United States only knew right now that Ames had this information. They had no idea Hanssen also was giving this information.
Eventually it came out that they both did. So yes, in a way, yes. So Yutsin was imprisoned for 6 years and then he was released, but he also subsequently fled back to the United States. So Boris Yutsin, the first guy. Yeah. The Soviets found out he was spying. They imprisoned him for 6 years. They let him go. And then he basically defected to the United States.
We allowed him back? Wow.
Because the risk was worth more... the reward was worth more than the risk, essentially, I think is what they're probably doing. Now, the other two, Marinov and Moritin, when they were recalled back to Moscow, they were executed and shot in the back of the head.
Like that, I would expect.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right.
But because the FBI blamed Aldrich Ames for the leak of these three names, Hanssen was never suspected. But this October 1st letter began a very long active espionage period for Hanssen in this time frame.
Okay.
In 1987, Hanssen was recalled to Washington, D.C. to investigate the potential penetration of the FBI to find this leak
All right,
of
I don't
these
like
three
that word
people.
Penetration. I think that's very... I don't know.
I don't know how else to say it. They penetrated. They broke through the threshold.
We're just being silly.
Well, by this time, it was rumored that an FBI mole was providing information on Marinov and Moritin.
Oh.
And Hanssen was recalled to D.C. to investigate this mole, but he then was actually tasked to find himself.
Oh my god! I just realized that. Okay. I'm seeing the dots are coming into clear view. Okay.
So he did what he was told. Short of identifying himself as the mole, he wrote in a report, quote, "serious security breach," end quote, by revealing a list of all the Soviets who contacted the FBI about FBI moles to the KGB in 1988. So through various different means, they were able to collect this information and say, here's a list of FBI agents who talked to Soviets.
And he was on that list.
He, of course, did not put himself on that list.
But did he know that he's...
He knew it was him.
Okay, all right.
He knew it was him. But he had to be like, oh, I'll find out. Yeah, but what better way to keep yourself out of the fire than to throw the whole thing off? You know what I mean? Oh. So also in 1988, Hanssen revealed secret information to a Soviet defector during a debriefing. So during a meeting. The agents working for Hanssen at this time reported this breach of information to superiors, but no action was taken. So Hanssen was meeting with a defector, was meeting with a Soviet defector, meaning they are not loyal to the Soviet Union anymore.
Right.
So Hanssen was meeting with this defector in the United States, had a meeting, provided some sensitive information. Hanssen's subordinates realized he provided sensitive information and reported him, but they never did anything. The superiors never did anything and took any action at this time. Oh. At this point, both the CIA and the FBI focused their efforts so much on Aldrich Ames as the only person supplying information on Soviets. But they were wrong. Yeah. In 1989, Hanssen then warned the KGB that the FBI was conducting an espionage investigation on Felix Bloch, an employee of the Department of State. The KGB terminated contact with Bloch immediately because Bloch was giving information to the Soviets.
Right.
FBI comes across it and says, he's providing information to Soviets, let's open an investigation on him. Hanssen finds this information, reports back to the Soviets and says, hey, they got an investigation on him. So the KGB's like, all right, we're cutting ties.
Right.
Essentially. So the FBI investigation into Bloch was turned off because they weren't getting anywhere. There was no more contact between Bloch and the Soviets, so there was they couldn't collect any more evidence basically against him. At this point, Bloch was never charged with a crime. He was fired from the State Department, In this failure in the Block investigation and the subsequent investigation as to how the KGB found out that the FBI was investigating Block resulted then into a deeper look into the FBI.
Sometimes you gotta clean your own house out. Little clean, little lemon spring cleaning.
Glass house.
Glass house.
Later in 1989, Hanssen would provide the Soviets with classified information regarding what we call MASINT. It's Measurements and Signatures Intelligence, a term for intelligence collected by electronic means, such as radar, satellites, or signal intercepts. And that's not classified information. You can find that on Wikipedia.
Never heard of that. I just learned something. Okay, cool.
So in 1977, the Soviets began construction on a new embassy in Washington, D.C. And while the construction was going up, the FBI wanted to dig a tunnel underneath as they were building this construction to go underneath so they could eavesdrop.
Because we nosy, girl.
We're nosy. We want to know what they did with
Snoopy.
And I think the spying game is always trying to stay like one step ahead.
Right.
I want to know what you know so I know what my next move is so I can stay ahead of you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. However, with the fears of being found out, the FBI actually never completely went through with the whole eavesdropping thing.
Got cold feet.
Yeah. In 1989, Hanssen was aware of the tunnel digging thing and intention of eavesdropping. So in 1989, Hanssen was paid $55,000, which is about $132,000 today, for providing this tunnel intentional eavesdropping thing to the Soviets. And on 2 separate occasions, Hanssen gave a list of American double agents to the Soviets. So the Soviets, as they're operating in the United States, also try to find spies, government employees, to say, basically to win their loyalty. Think of the Americans, right? Win their loyalty. And the double agent persona would be that whatever I get from the Soviets, I'm then turning back to the United States.
Right. And while you're going through the story, that's exactly what I'm thinking of, is that freaking show.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the Americans.
Absolutely. Being undetected for years at this point, it's likely because Hanssen was trained and his experience in counterintelligence agent is why he's never gotten caught. Now, while there were some suspicions, he still was not identified as a spy at this point. Hanssen likely became worried, though. The USSR disbanded in 1991, right? So we're getting up to like 1990 time frame. And Soviets ended all communications at this time. In the following year, the Russian Federation reinitiated contact with Soviet spy agencies. They shut down, and then they were like, hey, bling, bling, bling. Remember this one time you were spying for us?
You always
You want to do it again?
Yeah.
So Hanssen decided he would approach the now GRU. He went to the Russian embassy in person, approached a GRU officer in the parking garage, and the Russians knew Hanssen. His code name was Ramon Garcia. He was carrying a package and offered the GRU agent that he approached in this parking garage his services. I was a spy before, I'll be a spy again. Here's a package. This was the beginning of his third and final round of being a spy from 1992 to 2001. The GRU officer, however, didn't recognize the name Ramon Garcia and drove away. He was like, I don't know who you are, so I'm leaving. Despite identifying his code name and also revealing himself as an FBI agent, Hanssen evaded arrest when an FBI investigation was opened based on this incident. So I don't think they had like surveillance cameras or anything at the time, but this GRU agent that he approached, somehow the U.S. government found out that Hanssen approached him, but they didn't know it was Hanssen. Oh. They just knew there was an attempted Ramon
Garcia
breach. Yeah. So that's all that they knew. So they opened up an investigation into this incident. In 1993, Hanssen continued taking risks. He hacked into a fellow FBI agent's computer and printed out a classified document. Now, while there's nothing wrong with this, as long as it's controlled and there's certain parameters are met, he took the document to another FBI agent, Ray Mislock, and told him, quote, "You didn't believe me, the system was insecure," end quote. Probably means unsecure, because I don't think a system can be insecure, but it can be unsecure.
On an unsecure system. He's insecure.
So Hanssen's supervisors, they were not amused.
They weren't insecure.
They weren't insecure. And they were like, what the fuck? So they began an investigation on him, but it did end in Hanssen basically saying, I was just demonstrating the FBI's flaws. Mislock, this agent, later stated that he did believe Hanssen was probably looking for evidence of an investigation into himself and then made the story up later to cover for it.
Yeah.
In 1994, Hanssen requested to move to the newly established National Counterintelligence Center, which was responsible for coordinating all counterintelligence activities with all government agencies. However, Hanssen withdrew his application when he found out he had to take a polygraph for the position. And I was like, nope, I don't want to do that because I probably would fail.
Probably. I wonder if Amazon sells those. Like an at-home polygraph test. We should try it.
Maybe.
I'm going to order one, and then I'll send it to you, Kat, okay?
I need to... No, it's your turn for a test. We're going to do you. In 1997, a convicted former FBI agent told the FBI he suspected Hanssen in this mislock incident, in the printing out the classified information, but I'm digging for something, but I'm really just, like, testing the security.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This former agent was Earl Edwin Pitts, who was convicted of espionage for selling information to the Soviets and Russian intelligence agencies for more than $225,000. Wow. Pitts was arrested and sentenced to 27 years for espionage, but he was released in 2019. So he's out. Watch, there's a spy among us.
Yeah, but he served some time, too.
He did.
Wow.
He did.
Okay.
I'm surprised at any espionage. There should be a life sentence. Yeah. But whatever.
Uh-huh.
Pitts was the second former FBI agent to identify Hanssen as a spy, but supervisors were still not convinced and no action was taken.
What do they want? What the fuck? The guy's a spy. Like, I don't get it. Oh, my Lord.
On another close call, Hanssen was investigated yet again for an attempted hack into the FBI's computer system. Hanssen attempted to breach the system. IT personnel were alerted and looked into the incident. They conducted a digital investigation on Hanssen's computer desktop, which disclosed that the attempted hacking, and it also disclosed an unauthorized password cracking program that was installed on his work computer. When questioned, Hanssen said, I was trying to connect to the color printer. Yeah. And I needed the password, so I downloaded this password cracker program so I could bypass the administrative requirements.
That wouldn't work for a 4-year-old. How is it working for the FBI? Like, that is a...
They believed his story.
Again, he's the luckiest man in the world. Okay.
They believed his story, and they gave him a warning. I mean, think about it this time frame. Like, we know so much more now about computer technology and the digital fingerprint and everything that's left behind, that because he was noted as the computer expert for the FBI, he had experience and education in it. If he's the one telling them things, they're going to believe it just because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Okay.
So around the same time, Hanssen was able to actually get into the FBI's internal computer case record to search if he was being investigated. His careless actions, including typing his own name into the FBI search engine, his address, coming up with no results, Hanssen decided, okay, I'm in the clear. I'm going to continue spying for the Russians. He established contact then with a newly named KGB, which it was called the KGB, it's now called the SVR, in the fall of 1999. All the while, he continued searching his name constantly and monitoring if he was being investigated.
Oh, my God.
While the intelligence losses, including the arrest of Valery Marinoff and Sergei Moritin, were blamed originally on Aldrich Ames, there were 2 cases that were still open and unsolved with the FBI at this time. The Block investigation and the embassy tunnel information. Like, FBI was looking into how the Soviets got this. Ames, who was stationed in Rome at the time during the Block investigation, and then because he was CIA, he couldn't have known about the tunnel. So they basically excluded Ames, blamed him for everything else, but excluded Ames for those 2 investigations as the suspect in it. So FBI CIA opened a joint investigation and after Aldrich Ames was arrested, they took some additional intelligence steps into order to kind of help with this investigation. Hanssen was able to evade any investigation into him, just because he was aware of the investigation and he was able to direct it. This unknown mole that the FBI was in CIA joint investigation was called, quote-unquote, Gray Suit. So Operation Gray Suit. Originally, they did not believe that the mole was in the FBI because Aldrich Ames was in the CIA, so they focused primarily originally on the CIA. And they looked into CIA operative Brian Kelly into the block investigation. They tapped his phone, they surveilled him, they followed him and his family everywhere. When a foreigner one day came up to Brian Kelly's home and knocked on his door, November 1998, they were watching. The man said to Kelly, "The FBI knows you're a spy. Show up at the metro station tomorrow so you can escape." And then he left. So the FBI is listening, FBI CIA joint investigation, they're listening to this foreigner say these things to this CIA agent. So Kelly, if doing the right thing, reported this and said, somebody just came up to me and did this. Him, his now ex-wife, 2 sisters, and 3 children were all interrogated.
Oh my God. And the children.
Even though he reported the information. Yeah. Wow. I think they were probably older children.
Okay.
Kelly was placed on administrative leave and remained falsely accused in the block investigation until Hanssen was arrested in 2001. And this was like 1999. So for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, the FBI ran an operation with Russian intelligence officers to provide them information on U.S. moles, U.S. intelligence moles. Like, hey, we want to know who is providing the Soviets with information.
Yeah.
The FBI paid $7 million to a KGB agent, Alexander Shkarbov. I have no idea how to say that.
What?
I'm just going to say Alexander.
But that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Oh, my God.
It's a lot of shit ton of money.
Yeah.
But, money talks when it comes to secrets.
True.
Alexander actually had a file. He was a KGB agent. He was able to access a file with the name of B, the letter B, as a mole. And while it didn't have Hanssen's true name identified in it, it did contain an audio tape from a July 1986 conversation between the spy that they knew and identified as B and another KGB agent, Alexander Fefilov. A voice, as the FBI was listening to this audio tape, after they were able to obtain it from Alexander, they were like, hey, I kind of recognize that voice. It sounds really familiar. So the FBI agent who thought the name was familiar, his name was Michael Wagasbeck.
Okay, girl, that was amazing. That was amazing. How she just read that name without having any issues. Oh, that's amazing.
I just went with it.
You did good. You did good.
I sounded confident.
You
okay.
did. You were secure.
I was secure. So Wagasbeck, he's like, this name or this voice sounds so familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. Like I feel like I recognize that voice. So in this file that Alexander provided, it also had some paperwork in it, and there was a quote in there from General George S. Patton saying, quote, "the purple pissing Japanese," end quote. Now, an FBI analyst who was looking through the documents in this packet, Bob King, he knew this quote, and he knew who said this quote, and that was Robert Hanssen. So Bob King has a conversation with Agent Wagasbeck. Wagasbeck is like, you know what? I'm going to listen to that audio tape again.
Yeah.
And he identified the voice as Robert Hanssen.
Wow.
So now the FBI was made aware who their mole was, who the spy was. They knew Hanssen's activities and locations in this quote-unquote B file matched with Hanssen's activities at the time, like where he was assigned and everything, like all matched up at the time. And they also provided 2 fingerprints from a trash bag in the file. It was identified as Hanssen fingerprints. Obviously, as an employee of the government, you provide your fingerprints, everything that's on file. And I'll kind of get into the whole trash bag thing, but basically he would use trash bags when he was providing documents to the Soviets, and he would do what's called a dead drop. He would drop it off at a previously established location. The Soviets knew to pick it up.
Right.
He would leave, and then the Soviets would come and pick it up.
And it's in a garbage bag.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the FBI opened an investigation into Hanssen, started following him. They found out he was, again, in contact with the Russians. And in 2000, to keep him away from furthering damage to, like, U.S. national security, they reassigned him back to FBI headquarters, where they could also kind of, like, keep an eye on him. They promoted him and gave him a job supervising an FBI computer security. his job was completely made up. They intentionally put him there, making him think he was being promoted.
Right.
But we're going to put you in a job where we can completely monitor you. So the job was made up. His office was rigged with cameras and microphones. And then January 2001, they gave him an assistant, FBI surveillance agent, essentially, who was there to report on Hanssen, not to work for Hanssen. So he's basically undercover.
Right.
And his name was Eric O'Neill. O'Neill stated that Hanssen was using a PDA to store his information. Do you remember PDAs?
Yes.
Oh my god. The little stylus that would come out and you'd have to like put in your calendar and make notes and all that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So O'Neill was able to obtain Hanssen's PDA when it wasn't on him. Like basically it was left unattended.
Right.
And so he downloaded the information, and the FBI was able to gain evidence of his espionage because Hanssen kept it on his PDA. By this time, there were about 300 FBI agents and CIA agents monitoring Hanssen and his activities between the surveillance teams, the undercover teams.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hanssen began to suspect something was amiss. He said he heard noises in his car to indicate that he might be bugged, like there might be a GPS system or something's going on with the radio.
Paranoia?
It was like really fuzzy.
Was he
Paranoia. The FBI tried to mimic this sound because they did bug his car. They did bug it, but they weren't able to imitate the noises that he was talking
sure they
about.
Were fucking with him too.
Well, true.
They wanted him to decompensate in front of them. Like they wanted this deck of cards to fall. Oh wow.
Right. So February 2001, Hanssen asked a friend at a computer technology company about a job because he was actually closing in on retirement. And this is once they identified that like who he was and they started doing this investigation, they were taking their time with the investigation to collect enough evidence so when they go to court, there could be basically like the government's responsibility to prove the charges, right? So the FBI is like, we got to hustle. February 18th, 2001, Hanssen made one more fatal move. He took a friend to the airport and drove to Virginia's Foxtone Park afterwards. He signaled the Russians by placing a white piece of tape on a park sign. And basically what this was doing is saying, letting the Russians know, hey, I'm going to put something off at the drop site. You need to go pick it up. It lets them know, hey, okay, we've got some fresh information to go pick up. So he did that. He put the tape on the park sign and then drove to what was considered the drop site. It was at the bottom of a wooden footbridge over a creek, and I've got a picture of this. And after leaving the signal, Hanssen went to this drop site wherein he was arrested. Hanssen's reaction, quote, "What took you so long?" End quote.
Are you kidding me?
The FBI surveilled the drop site for 2 more days just to see, like, what Russian spies, like, if they could identify who the Russian spies were that were going to go pick up the stuff, to see what other additional intelligence they would be able to collect. So they left it there. They did have to, however, knowing that there was classified information inside, they did have to keep 24-hour watch on it. Of course. So when he was arrested, Hanssen was in possession of a letter to the Russians saying that he was promoted to a quote-unquote do-nothing job outside of regular access to information and that, quote, something has aroused the sleeping tiger, end quote. So he could suspect that, like, something was going on.
Yeah.
Hanssen was able to avoid the death penalty by pleading guilty and sharing information to authorities, like information he shared. And that's the only reason we know what information really that he shared is because he had confessed some of this, other than what was caught and like on his PDA and that kind of thing. He pled to 13 counts of espionage, 1 count of attempted espionage, 1 count of conspiracy to commit espionage in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. On May 10, 2002, Hanssen was sentenced to 15 consecutive sentences of life. 15 life sentences. In prison without the possibility of parole. But he did avoid the...
at that point. You got 15.
Right.
Why do they even say parole at that point?
I mean, I think they have to, obviously, for like legal reasons. They have to say you are not eligible for parole. But he was able to avoid the death penalty. And during his sentencing, he said, quote, "I apologize for my behavior. I am shamed by it. I have opened the door for calumny against my totally innocent wife and children. I have hurt so many deeply," end quote.
Yeah.
So in Hanssen's personal life, he was described to be close to his family. They attended Catholic Mass weekly, every week. Like, I hate to say religiously.
Right. Yeah.
Bonnie, his wife, retired from teaching theology at Oak Crest Prep School, where their 3 daughters attended. Mm-hmm. Their 3 sons also attended a prep school called The Heights. And as regular Mass attenders, Hanssen said after his arrest that while he was spying, he was confessing to his priest.
After his arrest?
After his arrest, he said, I went to confessions and I told my priest I confessed my sins. Hanssen had a friend who was a retired Army officer, and he would watch the Hanssens having sex without Bonnie's knowledge.
What? Wait.
He was apparently was very, like, freaky-deaky.
Wait, Robert was freaky-deaky?
Yeah.
And he would record him having sex with his wife and record it.
Yes, he would covertly videotape having sex with his wife, giving it to his friend, who was this Army retired officer. But then the Army retired officer would also, like, peek in the window and watch them having sex. Robert knew that he was there, but Bonnie didn't know. Bonnie didn't know that he was recording them being videotaped having sex either.
Ew.
He also detailed his sex life on internet chat rooms, but did not provide enough information where, like, people would be like, oh, I know it's you, you know. Hanssen also frequented DC strip clubs and spent a great deal of time with one particular stripper. Hanssen brought her to his Hong Kong business trips on several occasions. He also brought her to the FBI training facility in Quantico. He gave her money, he gave her jewelry, and he gave her a used Mercedes, but ended contact with her when she began using drugs and doing sex work. And this was all prior to his arrest. She offered, apparently, according to her testimony, to have sex with him on several occasions, but he declined, and instead he tried to convert her to Catholicism.
I love how this whole backstory to him started with he went to church, dude.
Yep.
Like this.
Yep.
Oh my God! It's like they try to paint a picture. Oh.
Yeah. So Hanssen is currently serving 15 consecutive life sentences without parole at ADX Florence, a federal supermax prison near Florence, Colorado. Many publications and movies have come out based on Hanssen, to include Ronald Kessler's book, The Secret of the FBI, in Chapter 15, Catching Hanssen, Chapter 16, Breach, and Chapter 17, Unexplained Cash, based in part on interviews with Michael Rockford, who directed the FBI team that eventually caught Hanssen, after initially wrongly assuming it was Brian Kelly. Hanssen was also the subject of a 2002 made-for-TV movie, Master Spy, The Robert Hanssen Story, with teleplay by Norman Mailer, starring William Hurt as Hanssen. Hanssen's, while he was in jail, he was allowed to watch this movie, but he was so angered by it that he actually turned it off.
Really?
According to the prison.
And this is one of the more popular movies, Master Spy and Breach. I know those two.
Okay. So Eric O'Neill's role, the assistant, right? His role in the capture of Robert Hanssen was dramatized in the 2007 movie Breach, with Chris Cooper played the role of Hanssen and Ryan Philippe played O'Neill.
Have you seen those movies yet?
No.
I'm going to watch them. I need to watch them now.
Breach, I mean, I know of Breach. I like Ryan Philippe anyways, but, like, you know, he was an early 2000s heartthrob.
He was.
And there's also a 2007 documentary, Super Spy, The Man Who Betrayed the West. And it describes the hunt to trap Hanssen. The next one, Hanssen is mentioned in Chapter 5 of Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code, as the most noted Opus Dei member to non-members. Because of his sexual deviancy and espionage conviction, the organization's reputation was actually really badly hurt. True TV, which was called American Court TV at the time, they had a series, Mugshots, released an episode on Robert Hanssen case titled Robert Hanssen, Hanssen and the KGB. The investigation was also covered in O'Neill's memoir, Gray Day, My Undercover Mission to Expose America's First Cyber Spy. That was published by Penguin Random House in the spring of 2019, so that's actually a fairly recent book. David Wise wrote a book, Spy, The Inside Story to How the FBI's Robert Hanssen Betrayed America. Hanssen's story was also featured in Episode 4 under the name of Perfect Traitor of the Smithsonian Channel's series Spy Wars that aired at the end of 2019, and that was narrated by Damian Lewis. Hanssen is mentioned in the 7th episode of the History Channel series American Book of Secrets, as well as the 5th episode of Netflix series Spycraft. And lastly, Hanssen's story is the subject of a 2021 documentary called A Spy in the FBI. But I don't know if I've ever seen that. That's pretty recent. And that's the story of the spy he thought he was.
I have a whole new list of movies I need to see. Okay, because this was good. But oh my God, like how stupid are we? Like what the fuck happened
it kind of goes back to what I think we were talking about earlier in the My Lover, My Killer. Like you go back and you look, you're like, there's flags everywhere.
Yeah.
So, having been with federal law enforcement to include criminal and counterintelligence investigations for the better part of 15 plus years, there's reasons why we have to do certain annual training, and he's part of the reason. Okay. So there was a lot of lessons learned that came out of not just Robert Hanssen, but Aldrich Ames, others spies, essentially that have been caught. There's been a lot of lessons learned with things that we look at that we now have to pay attention more to. Essentially. Yeah. Lessons learned. I mean, that's the only way we learn and improve is to identify what we did wrong to improve what we can do better. Yeah. Because there will be a next time. There will be another time.
Of course. And it'll be scarier but like how many people died because he was giving away secrets? How many people's like lives were either tortured or something because he was betraying his country?
So while he said he did it for the money, there is really no other true motive. And one of the things to say is like money is a means. You can do it for the money, but what's the money gonna be used for? Is it to pay your stripper girlfriend?
Right.
Is it to put your kids through college? Is it to, like, what is, the money is a means to something, some other type of reason why you do it, but he's never given another reason. Yeah. At least that's been made public.
Some people just like watching the world burn. Like, what was that movie where, I think it was Batman, I think it was The Dark Knight, where they were describing meeting another character like the Joker, where they couldn't figure out the Joker, they couldn't get a profile on him because he was crazy. And they were saying, like you're saying, like there's got to be a reason for this, a reason for that. And they gave like a story where like this diamond hunter in Africa was killing people for diamonds, and they wanted to know like what he was going to do with the diamonds, but in the end he did nothing with the diamonds, but he killed hundreds of people. It's almost like it was not necessarily about the diamonds. He maybe kind of liked the sport of either betraying or being ahead of the game or killing.
The thrill.
The thrill, yeah.
Yeah, the thrill of it. Ugh. And he did it for so many years. And while it wasn't consistent, the impact... And of course, they're not going to publicly release the classified information that was given to the Russians or the Soviets at the time. But the amount of damage that would be a breach of national security, I mean, we've talked about that before, too. When we talked about, like, the Area 51 and the different levels and everything. So, I don't know. But, yeah, that's my super spy story.
Cool. I'm shocked he's alive. I'm shocked.
Well, the only reason he's alive is because it was part of his plea.
Yeah.
So he'll die in prison.
Yeah. I wonder if we're still using him for information that he's not telling us. Maybe they kept him alive because they're like, you're not telling us everything. We're going to keep you around for another 20 years. You're going to tell us eventually.
I don't know. So I think he is 78 years old right now.
He'll live another 20 years.
Potentially.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing that. That was really good. I enjoyed that. Because we don't want to leave you hanging, chatters, for more information on this case. And Kat is going to have all the pictures, right?
I'll have pictures and goods.
And the goodies. All right. You check out after that Crime Chat. Only available on our Patreon.
Don't forget to follow us on the socials. Crime Chat with Nat and Kat. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. To see what we got coming up.
Yes.
Next.
And remember, Crime Chat with Nat and Kat. We say subscribe to our Patreon because we have the goodies that'll be heading your way. So subscribe to this Patreon. You're not going to regret it. You're going to get behind the scenes, bloopers, also merch in the works.
And you don't want to miss our next episode, which is...
It's a mystery. Either way, you don't want to miss it.
Either way, you don't want to miss it. We'll see you on the next Crime Chat.
Yeah.